Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, come on, folks. It's a beautiful, sunshiny Detroit summer morning. We can do better than that. Good morning. Thank you. Wonderful. Let's give everybody a round of applause for coming out this morning for this wonderful, wonderful event. I am your MC. My name is Jeff Jones. And I work with a wonderful group of people called the State Fairgrounds Development Coalition. And on behalf of this wonderful organization, I'd like to extend to you a welcome for this wonderful event. You might ask yourself, why am I here this morning? I could be so many other places this morning. Why am I here? Well, let me tell you why. Because this is a love story, ladies and gentlemen. It's a love story. It's about people who fell in love with a city, with a region, with a state, with 162 acres of the city of Detroit. We fell in love with the single largest developable parcel in the city of Detroit. None other than our own Michigan State Fairgrounds. If you'll just turn over to your left, you can see it. We're in the shadow of that great, wonderful site. When you think about the State Fairgrounds, just pause for a minute and let your mind wander back to those days. Can you smell the cotton candy, the caramel corn, the thrill of going on rides until your tummy ached, finding your first love on the midway, losing your first love in the parking lot? The State Fairgrounds meant so much to so many people, and we were heartbroken to see our state fair leave. But in that sadness, we also see that there's a new opportunity abreast. And so the State Fairgrounds Development Coalition got together to advocate for what is the best and the highest use of our state treasure, of our regional treasure, of our city's treasure. So when the powers that be think about how you redevelop this great parcel, the residents, we've come together, we've thought about it, we've deliberated, we've built consensus, we've reached out and built coalitions across east side and west side, Detroit and suburbs, Michiganders and Canadians. It's an international love affair, ladies and gentlemen, with our own state fair. And so we've invited you all out this afternoon to hear from architects and design professionals, economic development professionals, social justice organizations, and environmental groups, all of whom have something to say to you about what can be our 21st century fairgrounds. We ask you to stay and soak up all this good information. We're not going to run away. We'll be here all day so you can ask us questions, because we want you to get involved. We want you to join in this love affair with the fairgrounds. You can pick how you want to be involved. You can come to meetings regularly with us. You can tell a neighbor about, hey, the fairgrounds is up for redevelopment. What would you like to see out there? You can call your politicians and say, hey, I'm a Detroiter, I'm a resident, I'm a Wayne County resident, I'm a Michigander, and I have an interest and a concern about that fairgrounds. Let me share my issue with you. Because the SFDC, we believe that together, we can make a development that is both equitable, it's futuristic, it challenges the imagination. Do you remember as a young person at the fairgrounds, and you would see animals being birthed? You would see the wonders of technology on display. It would take a young mind to heights never before imagined. We want a 21st century fairgrounds that does just that. Stir the hearts and minds of our folks so that we too can embrace what the 21st century has in store for us. So let me not belabor that point, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a full roster of great speakers who are going to come to you today. But first, let me be respectful and let me grace you with the presence of our own neighbor, Miss Cheryl Harris, who will present you with her own welcome from here in Ralston Village. Let's give her a round warm of applause. Come on, Cheryl. first step. All right.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Cheryl Harris, and I'm a resident at the State Fair Apartments.
Right.
And I'm going to welcome you all to the area and let you know that what the State Fair means to me is the future of our youth. That's what I advocate for because they are our future, right?
That's right.
So what I propose in my mind to see one of the things that happens at the State Fair is a recreation / technical building where kids can go and not only have fun, recreation, but learn how to become entrepreneurs. That's what I am. My business is Renee's Natural Hair and Body Care. I develop natural hair care products without all the junk in it that's making everybody go bald. So, with that being said, I'm not really a speaker in front of crowds of people. I'm actually nervous and I don't know what. But I just want to welcome you all here. Hopefully we get a large crowd because as far as I'm concerned, this is very important. Like Jeff stated, this is 132 acres, but a part of it's been already sold.
142.
So 142 acres that's up for redevelopment. I can see so much going on over there that I know the key is to make money. That's what everybody's thinking. Okay, we need to create jobs. We can do that with the 7 elements that the State Fair Coalition has designed. I think they're on those posters. The seven elements.
It's in the program book.
And it's in the program book. So thanks a lot, Frank. With that being said, I'm about to get off this mic because, like I said, I'm not a speaker. I don't know how I wound up here, Frank.
About to reopen Detroit's oldest bar. Detroit's oldest bar, the historic Stonehouse bar. So I think if we can convince him to come on across the street and address us real quickly, can you all say with me, "Hey David"? Hey David! Oh, I don't think he heard you. Let's try it a little bit louder, folks. Hey David! Hey David! Oh, there it is. Oh, wow! It's David Szpond, our gracious host.
I'm not prepared for a speech, but I'm just going to speak from my heart. I want to thank everyone that was... Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
I'm not prepared for a speech, but I'm going to speak from my heart and my thoughts as I am now. I know a lot of people put a lot of work into making this day happen. We had landscapers out there cutting the grass, trimming trees, spring cleaning. We had the neighbors helping. We had the State Fair Coalition Group. We had a lot of volunteers, and all you guys are here to, celebrate the rebirth of Detroit. This area here, I vision the State Fair as. Hang on. Here we go. I vision the State Fair as not just factories and big box retail. I vision it as a village. It comes into, you come into this from the suburbs into the city, and it's like a mountain pot. Everybody's here. And I vision it as more of a walkable community. I also look at Detroit's a huge city and has all these villages in it. We have a little village going here. We got people that's been here for years. There we go. So I have a big vision. I'm on the coalition board, and I know that a lot of people there put a lot of effort into making things happen, so it does happen, develop properly. And then our Stonehouse is not open. It hasn't been open for a little bit. We are in between ownership now. But we are a part of the community. We've been here for many years. I live in Palmer Woods, so I'm a citizen here. And what else can I say? We needed a party. We needed to have a place to speak. And so we figured we're going to have our little gathering today, and then we're going to have some music later on. So enjoy the party. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Are you guys ready to party? All right, all right. Now, I want to ask you to turn to the person to your right and say, here comes the good part. All right, yes, here comes the good part. One of our first keynote speakers, I met this dynamic young man during the last election cycle, and I was so impressed by his grasp of the issues, his policy platforms, but what most impressed me was his humanness. When I met him, he seemed like a person that I would meet on any street corner in the city of Detroit. Accomplished, well-versed, but an everyday man. And so I'd like to read a little bit about his bio for you as we ask him to come up and share a few words with us. The question reads, who is Abdul El-Sayed? Dr. Abdul El-Sayed is a physician, a public health expert, and progressive activist. In 2018, Abdul ran for governor of Michigan on a progressive platform advocating for universal health care, clean water for all, debt-free tuition, and tuition-free higher education. He also championed a pathway to 100% renewable energy and to rebuild the barrier between corporations and government. His bid was also endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. As a professor at Columbia University's Department of Epidemiology, Abdul became internationally recognized expert in health policy and in health inequalities. He was director of the Columbia University Systems Science Program and Global Research Analytics for Population Health. He has over 100 peer-reviewed publications, including a textbook on system science and population health. Abdul holds a doctorate in public health from Oxford University, where he is a Rhodes Scholar. Y'all heard that, he's a Rhodes Scholar. As well as a medical degree from Columbia University. He graduated Phi Beta Kappa with the highest distinction from the University of Michigan, where he was chosen to deliver the student commencement speech alongside former President Bill Clinton. He is a native Michigander who was born and raised in Metro Detroit, where he lives with his wife, Sarah, and daughter, Emily. He is a proud member of UAW Local 1981 and AFT Local 477. It is my distinct pleasure to bring a giant in the Michigan political landscape, our own son, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed.
All right, thank you so much. That was quite too much of an introduction. I hope that all of you all know me better than all of that. I'm honored and privileged to be here. I gotta ask a couple questions before we get started though. Who here believes that public land should be for public use? And who here believes that we the people should have a voice in what happens to this space? And who here is ready to make that happen? Let me hear you. So I want to tell you, my first public service was as health commissioner in the city of Detroit. And I had just come from a role as a professor studying public health. What are the things that make people healthier, particularly in urban communities? And one of the things that always comes out is that vibrant urban community spaces, the kinds of places that let people come together, to celebrate one another, to make community, that those places are associated with better health and communities. And when I came to the city, one of the things that I came to appreciate is that those kinds of spaces are so lacking. Sure, we've got downtown and midtown, but in the city of 138 square miles, in the places where people live, learn, work, pray, and play, we do not have enough space for people to make that kind of community, and we need that here in the city of Detroit. And when we consider the fact of the matter is that we live in a country whose ideals are stated in the Constitution. And who can tell me what the first three words of that Constitution are? We the people. Who knows what the other ones are? In order to form a more perfect union. Right there, in those first 10 words, is the credo, the ideal of what makes American democracy great. That we, the people, come together and decide what happens in this space, in this hallowed land. And when we ask ourselves about that space there, public land, land owned by our state, we have to ask ourselves whose voice ought to be heard? We, the people. And that's what we're here to do today. We've got a choice about what happens in this space. A space where generations of Michiganders would come together to make community. A place that used to bring the whole state together. Right now, those folks who've bent this city over backwards to the wants of huge corporations, most of the time outside of the state, you know what they want to do. They want to do exactly the same thing. They want to give huge subsidies to big corporations so those corporations can be richer, and meanwhile, we, the people, are left paying the tab so that those folks can take our land and do what they want with it. And right now, we're standing up to say no. Because in this country, the people who make the decisions are we, the people. So now the question is what to do. There are proposals being pushed by this community who represent we, the people, about how we can take this incredible space of land and turn it into a community space where people come together, engaging with one another in their communities, where we can turn it into a hub for public transit, which is so lacking in Southeast Michigan. And it can be a space that is truly owned by the community that lives among it. We've got a responsibility today to stand up and make sure that we, the people's voices, are heard. And that's what you're doing here today. I could not be more honored to be with you, to walk this path with you, to stand as an ally for this community, and a belief in this Constitution that says that our voices should matter most about what happens in spaces in our backyard. And I know that when we continue to come together, in days like this when it's beautiful, and other days when it's less beautiful, when we're willing to gird ourselves to do the work, I know that the people's voices will be heard, because that is what this democracy is all about. Thank you so much for having me, and God bless and good luck.
Someone the other week, I feel like every grain of sand in the city of Detroit somehow belongs to me. You disturb one dust or you're going to have an issue with me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is again my pleasure to bring someone to you who is very dear and true to my heart. You know, we use the word passion a lot. You know, and sometimes we use it so much that it gets watered down. It becomes kind of mushy. But sometimes you meet people who embody that term so much, it's beyond the definition. She exudes passion for this work. And it is because of Miss Karen Hammer that I am involved to this day. So I'd like to present to you the queen mother of our campaign, our moral center, Miss Karen Hammer.
Welcome, everybody. So we have a wonderful, wonderful group of people here who are going to share their knowledge and expertise with you. And I wanted to start out by reading a letter from Steve Jenkins, who was the former manager of the State Fair. and he couldn't make it today. So I'm going to read you two things. If you'll notice, in your programs, there is a letter from Steve Jenkins, and it sort of sums up his approach. So he says, well, Steve Jenkins, by the way, is the former general manager, and he also served as assistant manager under John Hertel. He says, welcome to all in attendance. Unfortunately, while I had hoped to be with you today, I am in Florida with my 86-year-old mother. I continually advocate for family first in all things, which is a theme that matches the underlying purpose of fairs. So as you enjoy the day listening to the impressive speakers scheduled, think of ways that Detroit could once again promote agriculture, community, family, and the best of Michigan. I'm going to read one more excerpt, and then I'm going to introduce the next speaker. This was written in February of this year, and he's setting the record straight. Like so many others, I too was devastated by Governor Granholm's budget veto and eventual closing of the state fairgrounds. The mystery of history stolen is how I characterize her actions. As mentioned by Mr. Lessenberry, the budget shortfall was absolutely minimal from the overall state budget perspective. What is not readily understood is that the fairgrounds had to raise all the money it spent. We were not funded with state tax dollars unless we were short in the amount we raised. This happened, but if you take the amount of funding supplement provided the last year of the fairgrounds, which was $300,000, it amounted to $1 a person that attended the state fair. What value do you place on family tradition and fun? I applaud your efforts, and please share with whomever my willingness to devote time and energies to reestablish a place for families to create lifelong memories. As I felt we're on the precipice of making the fairgrounds self-sustaining on a continuing basis, which is in your programs, that's the letter that's in your programs, I will forever wonder about the mystery of history stolen. So that's Steve Jenkins. So, our next guest is Mr. L.C. Scramlin. He is the Zone 2 Director for the Michigan Association of Fairs and Exhibitions. He was a 10-year 4-H exhibitor at the Oakland County Fair, a youth and open exhibitor for 46 years at the Michigan State Fair, and he worked as a sheep superintendent the last 7 years the state fair ran. He is now the general manager of the Oakland County Fair in Davisburg, and he and his wife are the livestock and agriculture directors at the Novi, Michigan State Fair. So I introduce to you Mr. L.C. Scramlin. Yes.
A little tricky. Yes, everyone, and it is certainly an honor and a thrill to be here in the shadows of the Michigan State Fairgrounds. As Karen said, for 46 years, this was just such a huge part of my life. And my daughter's here with me today. It grew myself up, my kids, and it was just a huge part of this community. And I'm here, as Karen said, on behalf of the MAFE, Michigan Association of Fairs and Exhibitions. This is our 135th year. Zone 2, I'm the director for Southeast Michigan. I have 16 fairs, and of course the State Fairgrounds is right in the middle of my zone. Matter of fact, Steve Jenkins hosted a zone meeting the last year before they closed the state fair for me here at this grounds. And so the fair business is still booming. This last year, 4.5 million people attended our 86 Michigan fairs. So I know that there's still a part. And agriculture, and I realize sometimes people think, well, boy, that's just urban or rural Michigan. But truly, it's the number 2 industry, about $90 billion industry here in Michigan. There's still a great story to be told. I'm reminded, I no more got out of college and was listening one morning when J.P. McCarthy, the great voice of WJR, was on and talked about how the number 1 industry in the country was the automobile industry. And I called on and got through, and I said, boy, it's certainly we're the motor-centered capital here in Michigan, but we need to realize that nationwide, agriculture is actually the largest industry nationwide. And we had quite a little discussion about that. And we finally ended, he said, I never really thought about that being an industry. I keep thinking of individual farmers. And I finally said, well, JP, I'll tell you, we could probably prove this. I'll go without my car for a week, and you go without eating for a week, and we'll meet back here and find out what really is important. That story is still there to be told. And of course, Detroit has had just switched the number of youth that are involved in growing their own products and food here in Detroit. Have a great story to tell, and what a great place it would be to bring back that kind of activity here into the Detroit area, because the youth, as was mentioned, have a great story to tell. Agriculture has a great, and fairs still do a wonderful job of entertaining our families, educating them, finding out where your food and fiber comes from is a story that has worked forever. And fairs adapt. You know, just a couple years ago, my wife and I were in Florida, and we decided to finally take a vacation that didn't have something to do with fairs or coming to livestock shows. And we just went to Florida, and we were driving down to the Keys, and we seen a sign for the Miami-Dade Fairgrounds. We couldn't resist, even though we said we wasn't going to have anything to do with that on this vacation. So we pulled in. That reminded me so much of the fairgrounds here. They had entire buildings that were dedicated to school projects. One whole building that was dedicated to the churches within the communities that brought in projects to show everybody. And truly, those buildings were bigger than the animal buildings. So fairs adapt to the community, and that's what fairs really, their core thing is, tie into a community, to be educational, to be a resource, and can be used in so many ways. And I just salute you folks, because I realize what a tremendous project you face. I still remember in 2009 pulling off this fairgrounds, and the tears that I shed, I know many of you did too. Part of Michigan went by the wayside in tunes for a budget process. And I think we're bigger than this budget process. We still know what's value. Already I've been thrilled by some of the people talking about community and putting people first. And if there's ways to help you, our association would be so happy. We'd love to have some of you folks maybe come over to our convention in Grand Rapids, just to show you how the state fair, I said, it raised my family. My daughter Lisa, she now is the executive director for the association for the state of Michigan. And believe me, we could tell you stories of the lessons she learned right over here in the sheep barn at the Michigan State Fair, because she was actually born, she was only 7 days old when her mom brought her the first time to the state fair. Grandma wouldn't let her come in the barn because she thought she was too young. But then on Labor Day, when she came back, she was actually 11 days old, and she got to come in the barn that day. And for the next 26 years, we celebrated her birthday every time over here at 8 Mile and Woodward in the show ring at the Michigan State Fair. So all I can tell you, and I realize it'd be a small part of the projects that you folks go, but I'd certainly love for you to consider bringing a fair back to this area, because I really think you've got stories to tell in a community that wants to hear it. Thank you so much for inviting me, Karen and Frank, and God bless you all, and good luck.
I'm a community organizer by profession, and I've kind of done this work all of my life, so it just comes second nature. And it's wonderful when you meet a kindred soul who also embraces community as their life's work. I first began working with the Rise Detroit, about 11 years ago, when this young man over here brought a huge check to then Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick in the amount of all the volunteer effort that was going to happen on the very first Rise Detroit Neighborhoods Day. I don't remember how much that check was, but I know it had a whole lot of zeros, Luther. A whole lot of zeros. And that's the value that Luther Keith brings into this community. He mobilizes thousands upon thousands of residents, everyday Detroiters, to come together and change the trajectory of our neighborhoods. I am overjoyed. I'm almost giddy, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to share this microphone with another true giant in the community. Please welcome with me the one, the only, the indelible Luther Badman Keith.
Yes, sir. Wow. Intro like that, I think should announce I'm running for mayor or something, but I want to share very briefly my own personal state fairground story, if you will. I too grew up going to the state fairgrounds and enjoying it. But I have a very personal memory. My mother worked every year at the fair. Not only that, she worked in the community arts building where they judge all the cakes and pies for the state fair. When the state fair ended, she came home with boxes of cakes and pies for her kids. And we loved the state fair for that as well. But I'm here to introduce your moderator for the next panel. I want to commend the coalition for what they're doing, and neighborhoods are so important, and I appreciate all the work and efforts that have been done to put on this event ongoing. But I'm going to introduce a woman, I hope I pronounce her name, Marya Sosulski. She is from Chicago, the home of the blues. I want to get my band there one day. I still haven't, that's on my bucket list. But she is native Chicago. She is a social worker assistant professor at Michigan State University. But she is adopted Detroit, and Detroit has adopted her. And I'm so honored to welcome her to the stage to moderate the next panel. Please give her a warm welcome, Marya Sosulski.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. I've been working with the coalition for the last 4 years or so, and have been so excited about it. Since I teach at Michigan State University, I used to live in East Lansing, but the work that's being done here is so amazing that my husband and I up and moved here last year. So we love Detroit. Glad to be here. So thank you so much. All right. So the next, the panel that's coming up, very exciting. We have 3 experts on sustainability who are going to talk to you about, sitting up here. We're going to have a conversation about one of the 7 elements that we're talking about. So the environmental sustainability, and what building for the future looks like. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio for each of them, and then they'll come up and talk to you a little bit about what they do, and then we can have some questions, Q&A from the audience. So I just wanted to make a quick clarification that these cards are being handed out for questions. for the panel. The yellow ones are an evaluation of the event generally. So, and I would remind everybody, if you could fill these out, there's a box for those over at the SFDC table in the corner over there. So before you leave, please fill these out and visit all of our wonderful information tables. We've got a lot of great supporters. But these white cards that should be being passed out now, I think, yeah, there they are. These are for your Q&A for the panelists at the end. So, first of all, we have about going. Okay, great.
Okay, I know. I canceled.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So first up, we're gonna hear from Beth Hagenbuch, who is a landscape architect and a partner at Hagenbuch Landscape Architecture. She has experience in master planning, design, and project management. She is president of the former nonprofit organization Grow Town, which empowered grassroots neighborhood development based on local food systems and urban design principles. And there's a link to that website in your program. Grow Town was a semi-finalist in the 2010 Buckminster Fuller Challenge Award for Socially Responsible Design. She was also the recipient of a 2015 Kresge Innovation Grant. It's a huge honor to develop the Penrose Market Garden near 7 Mile and Woodward Avenue near Detroit, or in Detroit. She was the lead landscape architect for the Urban Garden, Lafayette Greens in downtown Detroit, and recipient of a 2012 American Society of Landscape Architects Honor Award. In 2015, Beth, with Ken Weichel, received a Merit Award from the Michigan chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects for the community-based design Meta Expo for the Fairgrounds site. Please welcome Beth Hagenbuch.
Like Marya mentioned, I'm a landscape architect. My partner